What if I told you there's a story in the Bible that defies logic, a tale where an army of 185,000 warriors, trained, ruthless, and unstoppable, fell without a single sword being lifted by their enemy? Sounds like a scene from an epic movie, right? But this isn't fiction. It's a real account, a moment where divine power collided with human impossibility. And here's the kicker: the key to this miraculous victory wasn't strategy, strength, or numbers, it was faith. The kind of faith that moves mountains and rewrites history. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever faced a battle that felt impossible to win? Maybe it's a financial crisis, a relationship on the brink, or even a struggle with doubt. Whatever your Assyrian army looks like, this story has a message for you. It's a bold reminder that no matter how outnumbered or overwhelmed you feel, there's a power greater than anything standing against you. And when you tap into that power, miracles happen. But here's the twist: this isn't just about the past. What if the same divine intervention that saved Hezekiah's people could show up in your life today? Curious? Good. Because we're about to unpack the secrets behind one of the most awe-inspiring moments in biblical history, a story that has the power to shift your perspective and strengthen your faith. Ready to discover how an angel turned the tide of an unwinnable battle? Hezekiah's reign was nothing short of transformative, a tale of redemption that seemed improbable given his lineage. Imagine inheriting a throne from a father whose decisions had led to spiritual decay, idols on every corner, corruption deep in the land. Yet Hezekiah didn't let his past define him. He drew strength from his ancestor David, whose legacy of righteousness provided a roadmap. It's a powerful reminder: your starting point doesn't determine your destination. Hezekiah's story whispers to us all, you can rewrite your legacy. He didn't just change laws, he changed hearts. When he ascended the throne, the nation was steeped in idolatry, spiritual blindness clouding their purpose. But Hezekiah had a vision, one inspired by a burning desire to align his people with divine will. Hezekiah's approach wasn't passive. He called for active participation, urging his people to rebuild their connection with God. It's the same for us today. Transformation begins when we actively dismantle what no longer serves us. To understand the magnitude of his reign, think about a CEO inheriting a failing company. The odds are stacked against them: low morale, declining profits, but they boldly steer the ship to unprecedented success. That's Hezekiah's leadership in a nutshell. His courage to make unpopular decisions, to dismantle systems of convenience for the sake of truth, is a lesson in visionary leadership. What systems in your life need bold dismantling? Hezekiah's reign wasn't a solo journey. He surrounded himself with advisors and prophets like Isaiah, creating a support system rooted in wisdom and divine insight. This wasn't mere delegation, it was strategic reliance on guidance. Here's the takeaway: never underestimate the power of wise counsel. Whether it's a mentor, a coach, or even a friend, your circle can either elevate or limit you. This king's faith wasn't just personal, it was contagious. Through his boldness, his people saw firsthand the possibility of redemption and revival. Hezekiah's reign invites us to reflect on how our actions can influence those around us. Do we inspire faith or fear? Do we leave people better than we found them? Hezekiah did, and his legacy became a ripple that touched countless lives. As you imagine Hezekiah's transformative reign, picture a man walking uphill against a strong wind. The journey is arduous, but every step forward strengthens him. His determination to honor God wasn't just a one-time decision, it was a daily choice. And this choice, made repeatedly, set the stage for the profound reforms that would follow, reforms that would challenge not just the people's hearts, but their very way of life. When Hezekiah initiated his reforms, he wasn't just tackling surface-level issues, he was diving into the very heart of his nation's identity. Imagine walking into a city littered with idols, each one representing years of misplaced faith. That was Judah under his father's rule. Hezekiah, however, was resolute in his mission to turn his people back to God. One of his boldest moves was tearing down the Asherah poles, symbols of pagan worship deeply ingrained in the culture. It's a powerful reminder that true change often requires us to confront uncomfortable truths and make bold cuts in our lives. One of the most striking reforms was the destruction of the bronze serpent made by Moses. Once a symbol of God's healing power, it had become an object of idolatry. This decision was controversial. How could he destroy something with such historical and spiritual significance? But Hezekiah understood a vital truth: when symbols become idols, they lose their purpose. It's a lesson we can all apply. Are there things in our lives that started as blessings but have become distractions from our true purpose? Hezekiah didn't stop at removing idols. He reinstated the practices that honored God. He reopened the temple, cleansed it, and restored the observance of the Passover, inviting even the northern tribes to participate. This wasn't just a political move, it was a spiritual unification of a divided nation. Think of it as resetting the compass for a group lost in the wilderness. When was the last time you took a moment to reset your spiritual compass? His reforms extended beyond the spiritual realm into politics and governance. By eliminating practices that weakened the moral fabric of the nation, Hezekiah laid a foundation for stability. Imagine if modern leaders governed with the same conviction, prioritizing integrity over popularity. His example shows us that true leadership often involves making decisions that aren't easy but are necessary for long-term growth. But Hezekiah's reforms weren't without resistance. Change is rarely welcomed with open arms, especially when it challenges comfort zones. Yet he pressed on, guided by his faith and a vision of a nation aligned with God's will. It's a lesson in perseverance. When you know you're on the right path, push forward, even when the world pushes back. What reforms in your life are worth fighting for? Every act of reform by Hezekiah was like clearing weeds from a garden, making room for new growth. It wasn't just about tearing things down, it was about building something better. These reforms set the stage for a renewed faith and a stronger people, but as with any great transformation, the real test was yet to come, one that would put Hezekiah's faith and leadership to the ultimate trial. The Assyrian threat during Hezekiah's reign was a storm brewing on the horizon, one that many feared would be the end of Judah. Imagine a small, vulnerable nation facing the mightiest empire of its time. The Assyrians were known for their ruthlessness, their armies sweeping across lands like an unstoppable wave. For Hezekiah, this wasn't just a military challenge, it was a test of faith. How do you lead a nation when the odds seem impossibly stacked against you? His answer was simple yet profound: you lean into God, not fear. When Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, sent his envoys to mock Judah, the psychological warfare was intense. The Assyrians used intimidation to sow doubt, calling out to the people in their own language, questioning their trust in Hezekiah and God. It's a tactic that resonates even today. How often do voices of doubt creep in when we're on the brink of something great? Hezekiah's response was to turn to prayer and counsel, refusing to let fear dictate his decisions. His actions teach us that when confronted with intimidation, our first step should always be to seek strength in God. As the Assyrians closed in, Hezekiah prepared his city for what seemed inevitable. He fortified Jerusalem's walls, secured the city's water supply through the ingenious Siloam tunnel, and rallied his people. This wasn't just practical, it was deeply symbolic. It showed that faith doesn't mean passivity. Trusting God doesn't negate taking action, it means doing what you can and leaving the impossible in His hands. In your battles, are you combining faith with preparation? Hezekiah's leadership during this crisis was marked by his reliance on Isaiah, the prophet, whose words brought divine perspective. It's a reminder that in times of crisis, we need voices of wisdom and truth to anchor us. Isaiah's reassurance wasn't just about survival, it was about God's greater plan. When life feels overwhelming, who are the Isaiahs in your life? And are you open to their guidance? The tension mounted as the Assyrian army camped outside Jerusalem, their victory seemingly inevitable. Imagine standing on the city walls, seeing an army that outnumbers your own 100-fold. For Hezekiah, it was a moment of reckoning. He didn't rally his troops with fiery speeches or promises of glory, he directed their focus to God's power. This wasn't just a strategy, it was an act of worship. How often do we face our greatest challenges with the same posture of surrender? What followed next would become one of the most extraordinary moments in biblical history, a turning point that no military strategy could explain. It was a moment that would redefine the faith of a nation, proving that when you place your trust in God, even the impossible becomes possible. The night when an angel intervened in Judah's darkest hour is a story that defies human logic. Picture this: the Assyrian army, 185,000 strong, camped outside Jerusalem, ready to crush the city by dawn. Fear gripped the hearts of the people, but Hezekiah's faith remained unshaken. He had laid everything before God, trusting in a deliverance only the divine could orchestrate. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. A single angel struck down the entire army, leaving not a shred of doubt about God's power. It's a moment that shouts, with God, no enemy is too great. This wasn't just about the destruction of an army, it was a declaration of God's supremacy. The Assyrians, who had mocked Judah and its God, were silenced overnight. Imagine the psychological shift among the people of Jerusalem. They went from the brink of despair to witnessing undeniable evidence of divine protection. Moments like these remind us that when our backs are against the wall, God's intervention can rewrite the narrative in ways we never imagined. What's striking is the method of this deliverance: silent, swift, and absolute. There were no grand displays, no thunderous battles, just the quiet, resolute power of God. It's a lesson in how God's ways often differ from ours. We expect loud victories, but sometimes the greatest triumphs come in silence. Think about the battles you're facing. Are you open to God working in ways you can't predict or control? For Hezekiah, this wasn't just a victory, it was validation. His unwavering faith, his bold reforms, and his reliance on God were vindicated in a way that could not be questioned. It's a reminder that standing firm in your beliefs, even when the world mocks you, will bear fruit. When was the last time you held on to faith in the face of overwhelming odds, trusting that God would show up? This intervention also carried a message to the nations. News of the Assyrian army's demise spread far and wide, leaving surrounding kingdoms in awe of Judah's God. It's a testament to how one act of divine power can ripple through history, influencing not just individuals but entire nations. Hezekiah's story invites us to reflect on how our faith can inspire and impact others, even in ways we may never see. The angel's intervention wasn't the end of the journey, it was a turning point. It left the people of Judah with a renewed sense of purpose and trust in God. But as with any moment of divine deliverance, the question remains: what do you do after the miracle? Do you let it transform you, or do you return to old ways? Hezekiah's next steps would reveal how faith, tested in crisis, shapes leadership and legacy. Hezekiah's leadership during times of crisis wasn't just a display of strategy, it was an exercise in faith. Imagine a king who could have easily relied on alliances or military might, yet instead chose to place his trust entirely in God. His reliance on prayer and prophetic counsel, especially from Isaiah, showcased a type of leadership rarely seen, one that prioritized spiritual integrity over political gain. Hezekiah teaches us that real leadership begins not with power, but with humility before a higher authority. When was the last time you led from a place of faith rather than fear? In the midst of overwhelming pressure, Hezekiah didn't crumble. Instead, he sought divine guidance, turning the crisis into an opportunity for spiritual growth, not just for himself, but for his people. Think about the last challenge you faced. Did you view it as a roadblock or as a refining fire? Hezekiah's example shows that crises are often where true faith is forged. The prayers he offered in the temple weren't mere formalities, they were heartfelt cries for God's intervention, a reminder that in our lowest moments, faith is our greatest asset. His collaboration with Isaiah during these turbulent times is a powerful example of leadership built on wisdom and partnership. Isaiah's prophecies weren't just words of comfort, they were strategic insights that guided Hezekiah's decisions. This partnership underscores the importance of seeking counsel when navigating uncharted territory. Whether it's a trusted advisor, a mentor, or even a spiritual leader, having the right voices in your life can make all the difference. Who do you turn to when the weight of the world feels too heavy? Hezekiah's faith didn't just sustain him, it inspired his people. At a time when doubt could have easily taken root, his unwavering trust in God became a beacon of hope. Imagine standing before a nation on the brink of destruction and declaring, "Be strong and courageous, for our God will deliver us." That level of conviction isn't born overnight, it's cultivated through years of walking in faith. It challenges us to ask, what kind of faith are we modeling for those who look up to us? Even in the face of uncertainty, Hezekiah remained steady, a leader who understood that true power doesn't come from armies or wealth, but from God's hand. His story is a testament to the idea that leadership isn't about having all the answers, it's about pointing others to the one who does. When life feels chaotic, how can you lead in a way that brings peace and clarity to those around you? As Hezekiah navigated the storm of Assyria's aggression and the internal challenges of reform, his leadership became a reflection of his faith. But leadership, like faith, is a journey, not a destination. And while Hezekiah's actions brought about incredible victories, the question remained, how would his faith sustain him beyond the crisis? Now that you've journeyed through the incredible story of Hezekiah, it's time to ask yourself, how will you face the battles in your life? Will you rely on your strength alone, or will you invite divine power into your struggles? Remember, Hezekiah didn't have all the answers, but his faith led to a victory no human could have orchestrated. What about you? What steps can you take today to align your actions with your faith and trust in a power far greater than your circumstances? As you reflect, don't let this knowledge stop here. How can you use what you've learned to inspire real change in your life? Maybe it's time to start praying more boldly, seeking counsel from wise mentors, or even re-evaluating what holds you back. And if you've ever doubted that miracles still happen, consider this story a personal challenge to rethink what's possible when faith takes center stage. If you want to go deeper, I've created an ebook that's packed with practical steps and insights to help you strengthen your faith and navigate life's challenges. It's called Christian Journey: Exploring the Bible in the 27 Steps. In it, you'll find tools to take your spiritual journey to the next level, things I couldn't fully explore here. I've pinned the link in the comments. If this resonates with you, take a look. It might just be the guide you've been searching for. Thank you for watching and being part of this conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another lesson like this. Together, we can continue uncovering the hidden treasures of the Bible and applying them to our everyday lives. Until next time, may your faith be your strongest weapon, and may your story inspire others as Hezekiah's inspired us.